Do you really want to live in Norway? Some people think they can just pack your bags and move to Norway. They think that once they have a cozy apartment they will find a good job, will earn a lot of money, average many friends, and will live happily ever after. All I can say about it, over the last couple of years, I have witnessed a few blogs of people who suddenly decided to Norway as the new home. But alas, they did not take long after moving to Norway to realize the mistake. Their vision of a new, exciting life in Norway is not entirely true. Not only do they often return to their old battered homeland, they are unemployed, and they have lots of debt. Since I survived from Norway, I think I have a realistic view of how and who would like to move to Norway. Hopefully this will open some of the misconceptions of the new immigrants, so they can make better choices. This is not a pessimistic view, and prepare for the worst, hoping for the best, as a point of view. But remember, there are always two sides, so that, after reading this, check the other side of the coin. Why Norway? Why do people choose Norway? Below are some of the seemingly positive benefits of living in Norway, and the factors that help people make a decision about Norway. However, be very, very careful in your decision to move based on them. They are not always what they seem. Moving to Norway for social benefits. Some people want to come to Norway because they believe that the government will support the social benefits. However, in Norway, the reality is that every employee pulls his own weight. Even if it is a socialist country, to arrange equality has gone far beyond the rights and many factors to prevent all equal. If the Norwegians should work for the food, plus have you also, social security, national insurance system. Some impressed with the social security system in Norway. They think that they will be provided free benefits, especially if they want to have children here. However, there are some conditions for social security, and, unfortunately, this information is usually only in Norwegian. Unemployment benefits to ensure work. Unemployment benefits, that is, you lost your job and want to apply for financial support. You must be a resident, that is, at least, have a residence permit, to work for a certain period of time, usually year full-time, earning some money and paying taxes, before you qualify for unemployment benefit. Entitles you to only a percentage of previous earnings, and in a year you cut off if there is no valid reason, such as injury, after a certain period. On the dole, you are required to attend courses on job search. National Employment Center can even choose to work for you, cleaner, scavenger, the waiter, and you'll also need to go to any place in the country to do any work in the opposite, if you can be cut off from unemployment benefits. Now all these benefits are dependent on the status of your permit in Norway, and many of the new immigrants have no rights. Benefits of childhood, maternity, paternity. For maternity leave, you need to have worked for a period of time, at least a year. I earn a certain amount of money before the baby before you can claim benefits for pregnancy and childbirth. This also applies to Oppsovestafskan benefits. This benefit will be a percentage of your normal taxable income that is paid by the employer. However, in general, benefits are based on the father's income. Mothers who are usually less than the income of the father. New immigrants who have not worked for at least 1 year are not eligible for such benefits. Moreover, the new immigrants may be in the process of waiting some permits because they stopped working, and must return to the home country. If you have not worked in Norway for at least a year, then you cannot claim benefits for maternity or paternity. Moreover, this benefit depends on your status in Norway, and many of the new immigrants have no rights. The birth of a child to obtain permits and Social Security. I watched as some of the new immigrants, especially students, believe that the birth of a child can help them stay in the country. They think that the newborn will Norwegian citizen. However, this is not the case. Children born in Norway do not automatically become Norwegian citizens. They inherit the citizenship of the country where I came from, the parents. Only when one of the parents is a citizen of Norway, Norwegian child can be born. So, this method of birth of the child to try to stay in the country with benefits is not possible. The birth and child allowances. All children born in Norway are at least 30,000 CR. That can be claimed in the first year, and then only when the mother is currently unemployed and Emila of the previous year. All children receive only 1,000 CR a month. If you are sitting at home, mom, dad, 3,000 CR. So from 1 to 3 years is provided for in-home care. It stops in 3 years, because you are expected to identify child in kindergarten and go back to full-time. This is a benefit for all children with parents who have at least a status of residence. Note: the child benefit. They are not enough to live on them. Another parent of a child has to work and support the family, or if you are divorced, have to pay alimony. The Social Security system will support the family if the other parent is not working, but it is at a minimum. Medical benefits provide medical care to all residents of Norway, but as a new immigrant is relative, each person pays approximately 2,000 CR a year for medical purposes to the free health care benefits frequent. If you do not have social number, you have to pay for their own medical expenses. To get all the health benefits, you need to be productive members of the national insurance system. That is, you earn enough money and pay the tax within 12 months. Children and pregnancy-related medical appointments are free on dental care, not covered by the national insurance system, and is usually 601,000 CR for public consultation. Note: the large number of people are depressed during the dark time of the year, and insomnia during daylight time. This problem is not rarely seen in Norway. Mental health is recognized only if the person has a serious illness, such as autism. There is a rule: no services for those who consulted a physician because of emotional or life issues. Pension benefits. The main advantages of the pension from the state for retirement are available to those who have a residence permit, permanent residence. That is, if you are resident in Norway. To obtain a permanent residence permit, you must have lived in Norway for 3 years, and to be present for at least 300 hours of Norwegian courses. Norway will only provide a basic pension from the time that you have lived in the country. The remainder of your pension must come from other countries where you lived. If you have worked in Norway, you get more, depending on your average salary. The basic pension is similar to income students. This is one of the reasons that many Norwegians take away his pension to Spain to try to stretch their money longer. There are so many Norwegian pensioners. Even the Prime Minister come there to campaign. If you want things like a car, good food and good accommodations, you need to work to be able to supplement your basic pension. Moving to Norway, wages and working conditions. Some believe that if there are high wages in Norway, everything will be fine. In Norway, the net wage is about 240,000 CR a year, which for most countries seem large, but in Norway, you can just to make ends meet with the salary. The poverty level is below 215,000 KR. Normal salary for one person will be about 300,000 KR. Salary of beginning teachers is about 320,000, 350,000 CR. If the above, then you must be someone in management, business, computer technology, or oil, or at least a master's degree. But there is something that new immigrants do not believe: the money, the cost of living in Norway. The tax system in Norway. Taxes are very high in Norway. They have to be in order to ensure that the improved social benefits. You will pay lower taxes if you only have 250,000 CR a year, which is 36%. That is more than a third of your salary goes to tax. Treasury. Accommodation in Norway. One-bedroom apartment for rent in Oslo at least will cost 72,000 CR a year, but can be very difficult to find a place to live, even if you are willing to pay the money. Even the students live in the university hostels for months until they find housing. Another nuance of the lease is that you have to pay for 3 to 6 months in advance, and when you leave the house, must notify 3 months. This may make the transition a costly and sometimes frustrating life. If you applied for a job in another city, rent usually does not include utilities. If it is a separate apartment, heating costs, especially in winter, will absorb a lot of money and can be 20% of the rent. Meals in Norway. Norway has to import a lot of food, and import taxes are outrageous. To save money, you have to learn to eat like the Norwegians. Otherwise you'll spend a fortune on food. Simple everyday foods are very expensive. Chili, peppers about 50 to 70 per kilogram in the winter. Food, of course, a luxury. One large pizza at the restaurant on average 250. Big Mac at McDonald's is about 120. Burger, fries and Coke. Food is one of the deadly costs of new settlers. Transport in Norway. To get somewhere in Norway is a lot of money. Full-size bus a day can cost you at least 50. Easier to walk if not winter. The rest of skis, sled anywhere. Because Norway has a lot of long ridges and to fly from city to city. Buying a car in Norway 250 and subject to high taxes, and do not even think about buying in another country where it is cheaper. It will draw you into the import tax. Working conditions. Working conditions are very good in Norway. Working hours from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday through Friday. It is very rare to receive overtime. You can get involved in the union and in general must take one big vacation period during the summer. If you do not speak Norwegian, you tend to know the language of the contract for a particular time, which is difficult to achieve, because everyone will just speak in English with you. I know several professors who are finding it extremely difficult and worried about the future employment. Moving to Norway unemployed. Many of the new immigrants think that they can get a job after they moved to Norway. A very bad idea. If you do not have permission to place, you are disabled. Usually, if you do not know Norwegian freely, you have no chance if you are not an expert in your field. Being a professional means that there is no one in Norway who could do what you do. However, if you cannot find an employer willing to employ you without permission, you will probably have to leave Norway to get a full-time employer. Carries out all necessary legal action to immigration, and that usually means that you cannot come to Norway to the work to be approved. UDA, however, UDA is trying to make the process faster, and there are some exceptions. If employers do not follow these rules, they will have to pay heavy fines for illegal use of your labor. You will never be able to easily find a job here in Norway. So as you can see, that the new settlers must be financially stable in order to ride out the problems. To be some savings for at least 6 months. Even if you work from the very beginning, you are likely to wait a month before you get your first full salary. Since most of the salary is paid monthly, you cannot get the money if you do not have a bank account, and you cannot get a bank account if you do not have social number. To get a social security number, you must be approved by the UDA. Often, This domino effect connects people's hands and feet, and also extends the lack of money. Few employers provide financial support to migrants and short-term place for you to stay in. But it's only for certain employees. If you want internet, telephone, cable TV, you have to wait. Moving to Norway. Free education. Education certainly attracted to move to Norway, as schools and universities are public and free. Other schools, as a rule, the international are cultural, in which you can learn to be paid in advance. Although the university is free, almost all undergraduate requires that you have passed the Norwegian high school level. There are items that do not require a Norwegian, but 99.9% of the undergraduate courses of the core subjects that are taught in exams in Norwegian. This is because each course is required to pass under the basic philosophy, which is the subject of the Norwegian language. However, do not need the Norwegian language for undergraduates and graduate programs, although some areas of study you will be limited in choice. Although education is free, the rest is of course not. Most Norwegian students have to take a loan from the state to pay for living expenses, if they can still live with the parents. Credit equal to the cost of higher education in any case, and in Norway, which is a big debt, at least kr 80,000 a year, and when you consider the wages, poverty kr 215,000. It is clear that families are struggling with difficulties when studying one of the spouses. However, many of the new immigrants are not eligible for such support, unless of course some of the loans are not converted into grants. People who are able to apply for student loans, political refugees, people married to a Norwegian citizen to reunite family members, children under 19 years, those who had full-time employment for at least 24 months, and those who have studied in Norway with private financing for at least 3 years. All this sounds great, but then you have to pay the loan with interest. If you plan to ever go back to a cheaper country, e.g. Australia, you can almost guarantee that you will have to repay the loan to the death. Only rich countries like Norway will allow you to repay the loan at a decent time. Moving to Norway. Statistics. Some of the new immigrants have decided to live in Norway, based on international statistics found on the wiki, although the statistics is given in order to have a good understanding of the country, which also can be misleading in terms of real life. The Human Development Index. Living many do not understand what it means. Human Development Index actually, as Norway has one of the highest rates in the world. People often feel that life is more luxurious than in other places. But the fact that the Human Development Index actually consists of how many people per capita are educated, how many people per head of the population is coming of age, income and quality of medical services. This figure has nothing to do with the standard of living, which is actually perceived as a quality life and is judged by the way of life, comfort, wealth, and happiness. Actually, the US, UK, France, Australia and Canada have almost the same color quality index, like Norway. However, the quality of life in Norway is different from other countries with the same Indescom standard of living. In general, most conventional production products to be imported, so fresh produce is generally inferior. Of course there is a fresh meat, but mostly frozen and canned. The almost complete absence of organic matter, and it is very difficult for a diabetic diet.